I'm Anna,
And I'm Fran.
and you're listening to Murder Words. Welcome back.
Two murder words
So,
online.
we might sound different because we have, I think, figured out how to record virtually. Maybe.
Yes.
We'll see how this goes. If you guys get an episode this week, it's because we figured
That
this
will.
out. So, before we jump into it, I do want to give an update on the Bardstown case. I looked right before we started at the most recent information I could find on it. I appreciate everyone. I had so many people tag me in updates and everything that was going on. But as of right now, they've been digging for like 4 days, and the FBI said that they have found an item of interest.
Hmm.
So I don't know what that means, but it makes me feel like they are closing in. They've been digging at Crystal Rogers' boyfriend's house, Brooks.
For
So,
days now.
yeah. So, fingers crossed they find some answers and keep tagging me and stuff as you guys see it because I love when you do that. So, yeah, we're going to jump right in. So, we're virtual and there's like a hurricane coming over top of West Virginia. So, if something happens, that's why.
That's what.
Pre-warning. We've taken every precaution possible.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay.
yeah, let's get right into it.
Okay. So I have a true crime update as well.
Oh,
We haven't covered this, but it was of course a national case when it happened.
right.
So Sarah, the man who is convicted of murdering Robert F. Kennedy,
Stop.
he was released on parole on Friday.
He was released or he's getting
He was
released?
released. He was released on Friday.
Stop.
Isn't that
I
interesting?
don't know that much about that case. That's super
Well,
interesting.
yes. So it's Robert F. Kennedy. He was, I think, the Attorney General. JFK's brother.
Yeah.
He was murdered
How long has that guy been in
um,
there?
since 1968.
That's how long he's
He
been
was
in
so he
prison?
like 50
Oh
years.
my
So
gosh.
so California just made this new law basically where they invented like an elders program. So people, even if they've been convicted of like very serious crimes, if they convicted and they spent more than 20 years incarcerated, they have an option of being released under the elderly program on parole.
I'm dying right now. I also was sent an article this morning that California is going to be the first state to pay drug addicts to stay sober.
Um, I love
And I
that.
immediately was like, how much does it
How
cost?
much is that's
How much does it cost to move there? One.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be
Two,
cool.
probably compared to West Virginia, it's probably their minimum wage is probably like, a master's degree here.
Yeah.
So it might be worth it.
Yeah. So it didn't, I read it. It wasn't like a super large amount, but
Hmm.
it was like a small gift card every month. But if this, California is huge. So that's a lot of money going into people. But still, I mean, that would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. I don't know if it's going to work, but I think that's great that they're working towards that. That's a great option.
Yeah.
They really took the term like, I'm just going to throw some money at it. Here, just throw some money at them.
Yeah. So if you're new this week, because we've gained a lot of new listeners
Hmm.
in the last week, um, this is a weird start. And this podcast is not about um, people being paid to be sober. So
No, it's not.
we get off track a lot. So,
Hmm.
all right. Yeah. Let's get right into it.
Okay. Yeah, we usually don't do updates. I just thought that was super interesting
Yeah.
that he was released on parole because I saw another one. I think it was JC, the girl that was abducted when she was 11, and he kept her in the back of her house and stuff. And then the parole officer came, all that. You know what I'm talking about, JC. Yes.
What's her last name?
Duggar?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Casey Duggar. Her person, the Philip, who, kept her and his wife Nancy. Philip has a chance to be released on parole as well early.
Can you
He got like
imagine how
400.
terrified she is?
Mm-hmm. He got like 413 years, but under the elderly program, he can get like off 406 early.
Wow.
I swear. Yeah.
Ooh.
Crazy, right?
How are you getting these updates?
Just, I don't know. I read.
Oh,
I read
so
things.
yeah, that sounds boring. I'm gonna be honest. Doing an entire like essay every week is really difficult for us. So, um,
I find it. I don't know. I just think things like that are so interesting. I don't know.
yeah. Also, something that's cool. If this works out, we can also start doing video at the same time. So our listeners that are
Yes.
on YouTube will be able to see us. So we're gonna have to start
Yes.
looking presentable, which we don't when we
No.
record. So
Not at all. All right. So let's get into today's
let's
case.
do it.
All right. Today's case is the case of Timothy Jones Jr. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
So I hadn't seen a lot of podcasts about this either, or any kind of documentaries, anything. And this is crazy. So he was born between 1982 and 1983. I'm not sure which one because it was just kind of a little hard to find some like his very detailed background information. But he was born in South Carolina. His mother, who I don't know what her name was, but she was an absolute terror to him.
That's good.
I know a lot of attention was actually brought to his family history because it shows like generations of like abuse and mental illness attached with his family. They actually even brought it up that there was like 3 generations of like incest, rape, and molestation in his family, like
Oh my
recorded events, like
gosh.
that his dad was like a product of rape and things like that. I mean, they was very detailed. Like his court hearing was public, like it was completely all recorded and broadcasted. So there was a lot of information in there. Um, so his mother, in his early years, when between like the age of 1 and 3, she was a sex worker, and she also had a lot of substance abuse issues herself. And his father was known to be very violent. One thing about his father that was different was that he practiced
Voodoo?
voodoo rituals,
Okay.
and this was like a family thing too that they did.
I think that's kind of cool.
Well, when you hear it's not.
Oh,
Um, so there's even a story of like um, Tim's mom being locked in a closet one time with like a chicken head, a dead chicken, like dripping blood on her because it was like part of the voodoo process.
yeah, that's a little
Yeah,
much.
it's a ritual that they did. I
That's
don't
just,
know if that's what happened.
if that's what you like, I'm all for it, but it's a little much.
Well, it didn't settle well with her. She was very,
I
like, it didn't
do
settle
not
well with
blame
her.
her.
No. His mom actually one time testified that she kept dipping him in ice water baths and giving him laxatives because she didn't want to have a fat baby. Yes.
What?
So, right off the rip, not going well for him.
I don't understand.
She did. She didn't want a fat baby, so
Ice
she kept
water
feeding him
baths?
laxatives. Yes. Eventually, his mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Okay.
And she was committed to a mental institution where she was there off and on, the rest of his youth.
Okay.
Um, when he was 15, he was in a car accident where he had a very traumatic brain injury.
There it is.
I know, but he was, get this, basically a genius with the math and computers. He was great at it, but he had zero social skills.
Yeah.
Like he was super weird, and surprisingly, he was super religious at the same time. So there's a lot of religions going on here.
Yeah.
Voodoo practice. Um, I think he was a Christian, and
That's what I was
then
about to ask if you knew what kind of religion.
yeah, and kind of all mixed together with that. And then he had a brain injury while he was super smart and very antisocial. that just feels like the making of a murderer.
Yes.
Like it just feels like something.
Yes.
Later, when after he actually has his trial, his doctor testified at his trial that the injury left him with a broken brain.
Is that a medical term?
I don't think so, but that's
I
how
feel
he
like that's
testified.
something I would say around my family, and they would make fun of me for the
I had a
rest of my
broken brain.
life. One time I called it a, what did I call it? The scientific table instead of the periodic
Stop
table.
it.
I'll never live it down. Like they still bring it up.
Stop it. I'm sorry. You're allowed to say it. You can say that to me all the time, and I will
I'm
recognize
the
what you're
only
saying.
person who's not sciency in my family. They take full
Stop
advantage.
it. Well, I'll speak to you in terms of what a doctor. His brain was broken. They showed scans. He said it wasn't normal. This was not how a brain was supposed to look
Yeah.
under the scans. So, in March of 2001, Timothy turned 19. He was almost immediately arrested on cocaine charges. While on bond, like a couple months later, he went on this like crime spree where he got like a burglary charge, a car theft charge, a forgery charge. So he ends up being sentenced to go to prison. In March 2002, as I said, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, which is confusing because January 2003, he's released from prison.
Why? Good behavior?
I don't, I guess good behavior. But yeah, he got 7 years, but he only served like 18 months. So in June of 2004, he meets this woman named Amber. Amber, he's 22. Amber's still a teenager,
Yeah.
basically, at this time. They're both involved in the church, and the church encourages them to marry very quickly. So they do, and they almost immediately start popping out babies. Um, Timothy was not a great husband, and Amber really regretted her choice of
Well, I
husband.
mean, it's not like he's ever seen what a good husband looks like either. So,
True, true. Okay, I'll give him that. Okay, true. He just had a very strict religious viewpoint of a woman's place in the household. Like she was there to cook, she was there to clean, she was there to pop out babies. That was her role.
and
That was her role.
that's really, I mean, I can understand if this was like you usually do cases that are like from the 1800s or early 19.
Hmm.
I can understand if it was that time frame, but this is recent.
Yeah, this is really recent. 2000 and 2004 is when they got married.
Yeah, I was 14. We were both 14 because we're the same age,
We were both 14.
obviously.
We were 14.
I can
I mean,
promise my
I get,
family is not having the typical woman role. That is not a
no,
thing.
I was, no, I was not. I was not treated that way either.
No.
Um, so in 2006, they have their first child, Gracie. In 2007, they have Elias. 2008, they have Nathan. That's not Nathan, it's Nathan.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I thought it was a typo the first time, but it's Nathan. And during this period of time, Tim decides he's going to go back to school. He's going to go to college. And he does, and he graduates in 2011 from the University of Mississippi State, and he has a degree in computer engineering.
Wow.
So, of course, they're not living, in the best of circumstances at this point. They've got three children, both without educations. So, of course, they're living kind of like, paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
what it would be. Well, shortly after he graduates, he gets this awesome job with Intel, and he's making like $80,000 a year. And so that's like, great money at
Yeah,
that point.
I would love that.
Going from, I would love that too. So, problems were there before, but now problems really start picking up for Amber because basically she's like, okay, I put up with all this crap with you going to school, your kids, your religious views. Surely you're going to buy me a nice home to live in and
Yeah.
take care of these children. He does not. He buys her a little trailer. I'm in South Carolina in the backwoods. The thing you can tell it hadn't looked nice in years.
Why?
So here she is in this little trailer with three children, two adults, um, and more to come. And so, because he like one's a big family, and so he doesn't. I don't know. This is a breaking point for her, though. You can
I don't
tell
blame her.
this is like a breaking
Yeah.
point. She's like, absolutely not. So Um, this is about the time too when it's called DSS, but basically it's CPS gets called. So the family had went out and visited some other family members in Mississippi, and those family members noticed that not that the kids weren't like, well groomed or cleaned, but that Timothy was a little bit harsh in his punishments, like his physical
Okay.
punishments. They did not
He
care
was
for the way
beating
he was
them
handled. At this
in
point, they
front
just
of
didn't like the way
people?
he punished
Oh,
them.
okay.
He punished them, yes, like they felt like it was a little too aggressive.
Yeah.
So on September 5th of 2011, we're still in 2011, a complaint was made, and they end up going out to see the home. They find Amber, she's pregnant again, with her son Gabriel, and at home she has children that are age 3, 4, and 5, with one coming,
Shoo.
and these children are homeschooled, and Amber also does not have a vehicle,
Dude,
so she just sits there all day long.
worst
Hmm.
nightmare.
Yes.
That's a strong
So they
woman.
find, yeah, you're about to see strong. She is in, children are cleaning in good health, but there is some clutter in the home. So they ask her, can you pick up a little bit? Which 5 people,
Yeah, in a
small
small
trailer,
place.
small trailer,
Yeah.
there's going to be some clutter, especially with kids, and she's pregnant.
Yeah.
So um, they come out periodically over the next month, all the way up until like end of October, just to keep checking on the home. They can't find anything like neglectful about the kids. It's just more about the inhabitants that they're in, like the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
They think it needs to be just picked up a little bit. So on one occasion, Timothy was hostile towards a CPS worker, um, and they asked him if to take the family to live in a hotel for a couple weeks while the home was being fixed. So you did see, like, I looked at pictures of the home, and there were like trash bags all around it and things like that. But you can just tell, like, there was just no space.
Yeah.
There wasn't any space for them. In 2011, November 4th, 2000, they decided that basically that the CPS case is like not valid. You know what I mean? They just need to pick up their house. I think she was just really in a deep state of depression at this point. Isolated, alone, no vehicle. She was trying the best she could, but she just could not keep up with everything.
Yeah.
So in January of 2012, Gabriel's born. And shortly after, CPS comes again. Just, I guess, it's like a follow up after they even close it. I guess they're just checking in
Oh,
again.
okay. So no
Just
one
to make
like called again?
No, she just had another kid, so they came to
Okay.
redo a little quick checkup on them. Because once you're in the system, you're kind of always in it, especially if you have other children.
Yeah.
So that was in January. Um, Between February and April, Timothy and Amber separate at this point. They decide that they aren't going to live together anymore. Well, Amber leaves, basically, and they're living with Amber in another home. Um, in May of 2012, uh, Tim decided, hey, we need to really work on our marriage. Let's get a therapist. Let's try to work this out and be a family again. So Amber ends up moving back home with the kids. They go to therapy.
Okay. That's a good sign.
Hmm. So CPS comes out and visits again at the end of May of 2012, same year. And this time they find Amber a little more disheveled. She says that she had filed a domestic violence report the previous week
Oh,
and
no.
that Timothy had put his hands on her. CPS tries to convince her to go to a shelter, but Amber refuses, like just to go by herself and not take the kids with her, which I understand
Why
that.
would you not take the kids?
I mean, she didn't want to take the kids to a shelter.
But I feel like CPS is there to help the children, and they're just like, you go save yourself. Leave everyone else here. I mean, maybe that's
I
how
don't
it's.
know.
I don't know, but
I don't know, but I know Tim had a lot of people tricked too at the same time
okay.
because
Good manipulator.
in June, yeah, kind of. He just looked good on paper and on the outside, even though he had his previous criminal charges. It really looked like he
Yeah.
wasn't, didn't have any kind of crazy things going on anymore. Um, so June 7th, they officially filed for divorce. And Tim, takes the oldest three kids to live with his father in Mississippi. Voodoo man. Just
Oh,
throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there, Voodoo man. I'm sitting here like, oh my
okay,
God.
yeah. Ooh,
So a few days later, Timothy finds out that his wife is sleeping with a neighbor boy who's 19.
okay,
And this really sets him off.
yeah,
Like he talks about later about how he just felt like so abandoned and thrown to the side and that it just festered within him,
yeah.
that he was just left and abandoned like this. So um, basically, Amber at that point is not allowed to have any contact with her children. And that's not through the courts, that's through Tim.
I hate when they do
He's
that.
basically, I know, he's using his family basically to shield her from the
Yeah.
kids. Because Amber at that time, June 26th, she tries to go get her kids from the father's house, but they won't give them to her. Um, Tim is granted temporary custody of the four kids, and this is because the marriage counselor, the marriage counselor, was able to testify in Tim's favor.
Why?
She did. She said that she found him incredibly intelligent and capable, and that he should have the sole custody of the children. And given Amber's record of, CPS coming out and checking her out all the time, she based it off of that. But she also found it weird that Tim had asked her not to wear high heels during their sessions.
He asked the counselor that?
Hmm. Because he did not like seeing high heels on women because that was not their place to wear high heel shoes.
I'm,
It made him uncomfortable.
I hate him already.
Oh, you're going to hate him more. So I'm going to tell you about a conversation that was brought up like in court
Okay.
by his pastor. So just to talk to you about how this counselor missed this, how this therapist, licensed therapist, missed this from this man. The pastor said, and these are some quotes from him. Sometimes he would make a statement and somebody would try to come back with an opinion or thought, and his response was always to quote the word of God. He would just quote scripture to them. Basically, it was like, I really like Ford Focuses, and he would be like, on thee to the Ford, no. You know what I mean? Something like that. Says, dude, we're not driveth. You know what I mean? Something of that sort, that caliber.
Can you
Not great as
imagine having a conversation with that person?
I just didn't understand. Like, you know what I mean? No one could understand. Like, this man was just incredibly antisocial,
Yeah.
and he just could not communicate with other human beings. I don't know how this therapist did not catch
Or
this.
thought he was capable when all of his responses were just scripture.
The scripture or just these random thoughts, because the pastor also testified that he one time called him at 2 a.m. and said, I want to know what Jeremiah was talking about by the great speckled bird. I don't know enough about religion to really tell you about like the specific religion to tell you about the great speckled bird. But the preacher said that was extremely weird for him to call him at 2 a.m. just to ask about this. He also called him one time and said that he felt that the preacher's wife was trying to seduce him.
I have
He
no
said
words for this man right now.
the pastor stated in court that Timothy came to his office, sat him down, and said that his wife was wearing things and approaching him and communicating with him, not with her words, but by actions and expressions that she was trying to seduce him. Which the pastor responded, my wife is a very, extremely introvert person. I really doubt she's doing this. So Jones basically went into a frenzy about this and told the preacher that he felt like a monster was trying to get him, and then asked if he could be like a leader in the church.
What?
Yes.
This is like all the
So
same conversation?
there's all the same thing going on right now, which the preacher replied, he was like, no, no, you cannot. And Timothy left the church soon afterwards. Him and his wife left the church after that. I swear to God, this is what happened. Like the therapist couldn't pick up on anything weird. Hours of conversations could never pick up anything weird. So, August 16th, 2012. This is all happening within the same year. Um, Amber uh, is 6 months pregnant at this point. It's not by the neighbor boy. It's of course by Tim. He couldn't just let her go. He had to impregnate her one more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had to impregnate her one more time. And Amber decides to go visit her mom, who lives in Ohio. She is allowed to see the kids for a little bit in Mississippi at the same time too. Um, by December 2nd, the fifth child, whose name is Abigail, whose name would later change to Elaine, is born. And at that point, CPS completely closes their case out. They don't want anything else to do with them, basically. They don't really pop
Why
up
would
with
they
them yet.
randomly change a child's name?
I don't know. I couldn't figure that one out. They just didn't like it, I guess. But it changed from Abigail to Elaine very quickly after
That's so
she
weird.
was born. hmm So we are finally in 2013. So from between January. Okay. So this is where it gets kind of iffy. From February to October, they're going through the divorce proceedings. Okay. And remember, the kids are still living with Voodoo Dad.
Okay.
Real weird. Um, but they're also coming back and forth to Tim's house and things like that. Tim decides he's gonna, have a live-in babysitter in this trailer with them. They end up weird because she ends up sleeping with both him and the dad for periods of time. Like she was in a relationship at one point with both of
The
them.
voodoo dad?
The Voodoo Dad.
Stop.
Super weird,
He
right?
probably, never mind. He
Her name was
probably
Crystal.
created some type of spell.
Stop it. She ends up leaving though because she says that um, they were freaky. Basically, like they really freaked her out. He was like super aggressive towards the kids. She couldn't stand that,
Yeah.
and she didn't like their church either, their religion either. She just couldn't get in touch with what they were doing with the churches. In May of 2014, social services and deputies interview um, Tim over allegations of abuse. From what I understand, the babysitter called in another call about it.
Okay.
This wasn't just like a follow up from the routine. This was an actual another um, accusation of
Yeah.
abuse. Um, Tim tells them that they like to horseplay with them and that they sometimes do exercises as punishment. Like he'll make them do like push ups or sit ups or something like that as punishment. Um, Social services noted that they did not seem afraid of their father, but one did have a mark on his head. One of the kids did have a mark on their head. They checked on the kids a few weeks later at school, but they found no more marks on them. They did notice though that the children's mother hadn't been seen in about 4 months.
Oh no.
And that Tim told them that she had walked out on them for a younger man and just left the kids. CPS shows up again, and Tim admits that he's physically disciplining the children. So I guess another call is made. And they make a safety plan with him, basically saying that he is not allowed to physically discipline his children. And the home's clean, everything's fine. So basically, they went in there and they were like, "We heard you're hitting your kids. We need you to sign this discipline safety plan that you're not going to hit them anymore."
I want to see the data to prove that that works.
Here's your safety plan. It's
Sign
almost like
this.
walking into like a domestic violence situation. Like you guys are going to sign a contract. You guys won't hit each other anymore. Pinky promise. That's exactly how I felt like this just happened. By August, they have another abuse claim.
Why haven't they taken them yet?
They come in. It's another case of physical abuse. They go in the home again. Um, the caseworker says that um, Tim just seems to be overwhelmed and that he's unable to maintain the home, but the children appear to be clean, groomed, and appropriately dressed. CPS schedules a 45-day follow-up visit. 45 days.
And
Okay,
so
that's
he
August
knows
5th.
when they're coming. Does he know?
Yeah, he knows.
Well,
He knows when
obviously
they're
they're going
coming.
to look good then.
Yeah. I think at one time they said they were throwing like a birthday party on the day that they came. You know what I
Of
mean?
course they were.
Yeah. So, August 28th, 2014, Timothy Jones is charged with unlawful neglect after he puts his 1-year-old child in unreasonable risk of harm. Basically, he forced all 5 kids to get out of the van when they were at a Walmart in Lexington County, South Carolina. Um, they said that they wanted to go home to their mom. They were mad at him, so he just dumped them out of his vehicle, and someone called the police
And left? He left.
and just left. So I don't know if he like came right back, what happened, but I know they were not removed from his custody.
Dude.
So that evening of August 28th, 2014, Nathan is 6 years old. Um, and somehow he broke an electrical outlet. Like there's a couple outlets broken. Um, and this was done when Tim was there, but he was out of his sight. This sent Tim into an absolute rage. Um, and in during the court, they talk about Tim said, quote, I PT'd his ass. And they asked him what that meant, and they said he put him through physical training, which is a military term for physical activity. He made him do like sit-ups and squash for an hour. He claims it was only an hour, but he didn't give him any kind of rest or any kind of water. And a few hours later, he found Nathan dead in his room.
What?
He exorcised him to death.
He
Yeah,
exercised him to death.
to death. Yes. He worked him so hard that he died.
Wow.
And this is from the next part of this is going to be part of this is from his confession tape. Okay.
Okay.
Tim claimed that he found his son dead in his room later that night, sending him to bed. He said he found him deceased. He kept saying the word deceased. This. He said he didn't know what happened. Knew that people lost electrolytes when they messed with electric, basically. That they left their body. And he thinks that he electrocuted himself and that it removed all his electrolytes, and that's what killed him.
That's stupid. So I was gonna ask, like, did they didn't find anything in the autopsy? Like they just were literally like I'm blown away by him exercise. Is that the real cause of death?
Yes, he exercised them to death.
I can't imagine
He
the
put too much
amount of
pressure.
exercise that he actually had to
Hmm.
have him do to kill him.
Hmm. And plus, on top of that, he could have been though, you know, not feeding him properly and things before that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His health could have been weakened before he even started. But yeah. Um. So after finding Nathan's body, um, Tim did nothing for a few hours. He didn't know what to do. Basically, he just kind of sat there numb. So eventually, he said that he started hearing voices in his head telling him to do other things. Um, Basically, a voice in his head said, F it. And he said, quote, he gave up and just went berserk. He knew that if he didn't do something right now, he was going to end up in jail.
I feel
Notice
like
he did
he's
not
gonna
say
end
anything.
up in jail anyway.
He said that there's no mention of remorse. Everything is going to, the following, there's nothing about remorse coming up. It is all about him going to jail and his life being messed up now. So, instead of calling police and telling them what had happened or running, or anything else he could have done in this situation. He then he then starts strangling each one of his children,
No.
one by one.
What? Why?
This was his plan. He said he had to get rid of them because they were witnesses to what he'd done.
Well,
And the voices in his head said that if he didn't do this, that he was going to go to jail for the rest of his life.
does he have schizophrenia too?
I think so. I think so. But he was able to pull off pretty normal, like not a job, degree, normal with the neighbors, things like that. But I mean, I don't really know. You know what I mean? This is just me saying this. So I'm going to go through some of this with you.
Okay.
He first strangled his 8-year-old daughter. Then came his 7-year-old son, Eliza. Um, and he did this with his hands. And this was not something that he did in a rage. He actually went each child by each child. So each child saw the other one being
That's what
killed.
I was gonna ask. Did they see this happening?
Mhm. Yes, they did. He said that they put up somewhat of a fight about it.
Oh my god.
So he strangled each one, laid them in the living room floor, and just went to the next one. I mean, the oldest child there was 8 years old.
Yeah, that's what makes me feel. But he started with the oldest. So he must have thought, because mine is 8, about to be 8, and I feel like if he saw danger in our house, to me, I feel like his first reaction would be to run.
Run. Yeah, I think so too. That's what he did. He started out with
The
the 8-year-old
oldest
daughter,
for
of
that
course.
reason.
hmm he said he killed them each one by one. Um, I mean, they just saw it. They just saw all this happening. I can't even imagine what was going through their heads during all
I
this.
mean, because that's the person that you trust them. I mean, your parents.
It's your
I mean,
parents.
especially a dad. We all know I love a dad. I just could not imagine having to see my dad like kill my
hmm
sibling.
Well, we're getting to the 2-year-old now. He first attempts to strangle his child Gabriel, his 2-year-old son Gabriel, but he finds that his hands are too big to properly strangle him. He could not get the leverage around his neck. He then goes and gets a belt.
Oh my god.
His son's last words were, "Take me with you."
Take me with you.
He, yeah, he doesn't know what that meant, but those were his last words, "Take me with you." He was 2.
Stop.
He'd seen his other siblings lying on the floor. The youngest child, Elaine, who was 1 at that time, her last words were, "I love you, Daddy."
Stop. That's the saddest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. So after this, Tim decides he's going to move all the children into the back of his, he can Escalade, I think, move them into the back of the Escalade. Not in the trunk area, but into the middle seats area of them. Because, they're usually 3 rows,
Yeah.
right in the middle seats. And he covers them with blankets, and he just starts driving. Doesn't really know where he's going. He just starts driving. He ends up driving to, all these different states. This is over 9-day period. Over a 9-day period, he's just driving around with these kids in his
I
vehicle.
feel like this is weird because I feel like a lot of murderers do that. Like after they
hmm
kill someone, they just get in the car and start. It's like they don't know.
What to
Yeah,
do?
I've heard that in a few different cases.
hmm I have too. I mean, he didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? So that was August 28th that all this happened, and a bunch of different things happened over the next 9 days. At one point, he actually ends up in a ditch where he has to call a tow truck to come get him. And when the tow truck comes, a law enforcement officer comes as well and takes a statement from him of what happened. but they did not discover the bodies in the back
I
of
mean,
in the vehicle.
they wouldn't have a
I
reason
wouldn't look.
to search, right?
Right. They would not. Um, After he was arrested, they did look at his Google accounts to see like his search history and stuff, and he looked at things about like countries with no extradition laws and how to disintegrate bodies quickly.
I mean,
Um,
can you imagine if they looked
yes.
at ours while
God,
doing
yeah,
this
I know.
podcast?
Yes, true, true. On Monday, September 1st, Tim is seen at a Dunkin' Donuts in South Carolina. He's later seen in North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. Like they're all on film at different locations at these places, and they know that the kids were dead just in the back of their vehicle, but you would never be able to tell.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't acting weird, anything like that. At the trial, the prosecutor actually showed like a surveillance video of Tim at Walmart, like just shopping in there, just looking
Like
at
it was
things
no big
casually.
deal, no
No
remorse.
big deal. Nothing was happening. Um, in his cart, he had items like a saw and a type of acid in his view in his something you could buy
He
at
was going
Walmart
to
that
cut
would
them
help.
up and then like dissolve them.
And sawdust. She quotes too, "You did not see a shovel in that. There was no plan to just bury his kids. It was
He was
to,
gonna dissolve them with that acid.
yeah." hmm They showed a note that Timothy had wrote and scribbled real quickly. And I have the picture of the note, but of course you can't see it. But it says one. It's labeled as one circle. Head to campground dash melt bodies explanation point.
Melt.
Yeah. Dash scrape bones to dust or use a saw press.
Oh my god.
3 or 2 loose ends question mark. And then on the side of it shows a list of bills that he owes.
Stop.
Just scrap, like scrap paper.
Why would he? Okay, one, I mean, I'm glad he did. Obviously, that's good evidence, but why would he write that
Yeah.
down?
I don't
And
know.
two, just to make this list like next to your bills that are owed, like it was on the same level.
hmm Yeah. So they asked him in the interview because I watched his confession tape. I listened to his confession tape, and they asked him why this one, why he wrote this down. He said that he thought of a million different ways to get rid of them,
Yeah.
and he just referred to them as them, not like you know, put my children to rest. It was like I just thought of a bunch of different ways I could get, not in trouble for this, but I knew ultimately I was going to. But he's like, I just wrote that down just so I'd remember it. It felt like a good plan.
Oh, just so
They
I
found,
remember it.
yes. He also was seen at a dollar store, I think also in Alabama, buying trash bags. Um, I know this is awful. So they asked him like, "What were you doing like while the kids were in the car? Like, did it smell bad?" Because at
That
this
was
point, it's been
exactly
like
what I was
6 days.
thinking. Like, that's a long time. Like, that has to smell.
So he said that because they found bleach in his car too. So he told them that he had the bleach to clean up the blood, but that he also normally carried bleach because it made things clean and he liked the smell of it, which I thought was super fucking weird too.
That's so weird.
I'm just gonna say it. Um, and they asked him like, "Did you buy anything else besides the trash bags at the store that day?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he said he bought a shit ton of air fresheners because that shit smelled awful.
Oh, that shit. It's not
Smelled
awful.
awful.
Not his children, not the
Anna,
humans
you're
that
gonna
he
die too.
was raising.
Yeah,
That shit.
that shit. You are gonna be mortified. They were beautiful children, absolutely
Mm.
gorgeous. So eventually, Tim decides on a spot where he is going to, dump these bodies in Alabama. He said he really didn't like Google a spot, anything like that. He just saw a clearing area, kind of like out of the way on a back road, and he decides, okay, this is where I'm going to do it at. I'm going to dump the bodies now. Um, and so he takes the bodies and takes them out from each one by one and puts them in trash bags and goes from, each one 5 different times over to like a spot right next to the side of the road and just lays them over there on top of each other. Um, he said that he didn't know what to do, and he knew that there's no point in hiding the bodies because eventually they were going to be found.
Yeah.
Like they would track his car, something would happen, and they were going to be found. So he felt like there was no point in really trying to hide them at this point. Um, he said that he did attempt to cut up Nathan with a saw, but then he stopped because he said he couldn't do it. It was just too much for
Because
him. He said,
it was too much
like
physically,
this
not
chop his body.
emotionally, or
I'm going with physical, and I'll
yeah,
tell you why.
because he referred
Because
to
they
them as that
asked,
shit.
yes, and because when police asked him why he started with Nathan, he said because he started all of this.
Why?
Because he's the one who broke the electrical outlet and died from overexertion.
Oh,
So it was his fault. It started with him, so he was going to start with him. And they did. They found out that a piece of his leg had been chopped. Like he was working on it. And then he couldn't do it, he said. He probably, and from what I got from it, there was no point because he wasn't going to get away with it
yeah,
to even attempt to. I also found it super upsetting that he had all these blankets in the car, but he did not cover his children up with the blankets. He left them exposed by the side of the road. He didn't even show any kind of remorse with it by like
yeah,
covering them up, just, you know what I mean? Trying to make them look neat and tight, you know what I mean? I know that sounds really weird, but you hear that a lot. Like if they were covered, you
yeah.
have some
Like
sort of
people who
remorse.
kill loved ones or people they knew will like cover them up as a sign of. That's how people know that this
Yeah.
person knew them most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Like they'll try to push their hair, their face, or you know what I mean, straighten their clothes out, something,
Yeah,
just to show like some type of remorse with it. You know what I mean? He had all these blankets. He didn't do any of it. He just threw them in trash bags in a pile together. And I saw I'm not gonna, with the episode, I'm not gonna post a picture of the kids in the trash bag because it's awful.
yeah.
I saw the picture. No one else needs to see the picture. It was awful how they were just thrown into. It looked like a pile of leaves.
He is a literal pile
Oh, shit.
of douche juice.
Hmm. So while all this is going on through this 9 days, the kids are missing school, and Amber is alerted they are missing school, and she files a missing persons report. Um, on September 6th, uh,
You said
10
Amber was
is
alerted?
that the children were not going to
Okay,
school.
see, in my mind, I
Yes.
was waiting for you to say that Amber was also dead already
Nope.
because you just said they hadn't seen her in 4 months, and I was like, oh God.
I know I was going to let you think it because I saw that in your eye. I was like, nope, she's just going to keep thinking it. But no, Amber's safe.
Okay.
Amber's safe. Amber's alerted, and so she files a missing persons report because she can't find him. And all this time, too, it's not like Tim was just going out for days. Like he was on a 9-day road trip. He was coming back and forth to his house, too.
Okay.
Meaning, like, he would go in and sleep and leave his kids out in the car,
Dude,
make meals,
that's a whole
whatever, but
nother
the kids stay out in the
level.
car. Hmm. So there was a like vehicle safety checkpoint in Mississippi. And while there, they found him with like drugs in his possession, which was like fake weed. They found some fake weed on him. Um, and so when they, looked into the vehicle, they noticed that his children were missing in South Carolina, and they found like dried blood all over the
Oh my
seats,
God. They could probably smell it too.
and they could smell it. They said there was an awful smell in there. So they took him in, and when he was asked where he was headed, um, in his confession tape, he said that he had decided he was going to go to Las Vegas.
Why? That's just,
He withdrew $500, and that's what he was going to do. He was just going to go to Vegas as long as he could
oh,
and see how long he could keep going until he was caught.
yeah.
I mean, at this point, too, they haven't found the kids' bodies either. They just know that there's blood and they're missing. On September 8th, they start to question Timothy. They gather all the information. He's in a holding cell at this point, and they start to question him, and he almost immediately confesses to everything. And I'll tell you what, I mean, his confession was awful. It was absolutely awful. Not just like the detail, but the things he added in there that were so irrelevant, and he just that never pertained to the kids or their well-being at any
Yeah.
point. There was never mention of remorse. There was never mention of how it was only what they did,
Yeah. What they did wrong, what they did to him.
what they did wrong, what they did to him, and how bad his life was messed up now. And it was recorded too. Like they played this audio like in court, so you got to watch his reactions to like
Yeah.
his own confession. Meaning he only cried whenever he started crying about him being locked up for the rest of his
Yeah.
life, the getting caught process from that anxiety of it. Absolutely awful. He did assist police in showing them where the children's bodies were. He's completely cooperative. Um, and of course, I told you they had this really long trial over him.
Yeah.
Amber testified during the trial as well. Um, and she actually asked the courts to show him mercy after he
Why?
murdered her children. She said, quote, "He did not show my children any mercy by any means, but my kids loved him, and I'm speaking on behalf of my kids, not myself." And that's what they would say. They would want mercy for their daddy.
Dude.
Dude, she went in there like a beast. They had to carry her out of the courtroom, and she read like letters that she'd written to her kids while they were living with Tim. And she had those
Please
letters that she
tell
read in
me
the
that
court.
that therapist saw this and
I hope she's fired.
like what a terrible decision.
Hmm. Amber said to Timothy, the last thing she said before she left court was, nothing justifies what you have done to our babies. But they loved you. I loved you. I also hope for mercy for you. The courts did not show it. He's sentenced to death. He was sentenced to death,
Yeah.
like recently. I think like 2019.
Really?
So he's on death row right now. He sits in a little 4x6 cell, 23 hours a day, by himself. And that is the story of how Tim Jones murdered his 5 children.
That is really crazy. Like really
Yeah,
crazy. And I'm really surprised that you covered that case because it's not a case you would normally choose just because it's so recent.
I know. I read a little bit about it. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is a swear. But then I saw what exactly all had happened with it, and how many times like CPS had a chance to step in, and I just thought, I don't know, we just need to talk about it
Yeah. The
because
ones
it
where
seems like
the
that just keeps
system
happening.
really fails
Hmm.
like bother me so much.
Yeah, he was. They were given the kids were given to him in favor of the mother, which is great. Sometimes that's great in great
Yeah.
situations, but he had a history of a prison sentence and undocumented, I mean, in some ways documented schizophrenia. You know what I mean? Like it was showing that he had mental illnesses. All he had to do was ask his pastor, and he would have been like, "No, don't give these kids to them."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's my story today.
that was a really good one. A really good
It
one.
was hard. I listened to so much of that trial. It like physically affected me. I was like, I had to get up like twice and be like, "Oh my God." Like,
Sometimes some of the cases that I research, I'm like, I can't. Like I have to. So, there was one where I got nightmares. Junko,
yeah,
Junka, for
I could
true.
see that.
That one where she was like tortured. Like I literally had nightmares when I was doing that case. But
Oh no.
yeah, so also we're sorry this episode's coming out a little bit late today.
Yeah.
Um, we just honestly couldn't figure out the virtual thing. So hopefully this works and sounds good. If it does, we'll definitely start doing videos on top of it. That's like our
Yes,
biggest
that'll be
request
fun.
is to also
That'll
have
be super fun.
people want to see our reactions, which I don't know if you know, but I'm overly dramatic and Fran is underly dramatic.
What do
So
you mean?
Fran's always been the calm one in our friendship.
I know, I'll just be like, yes, he's walking down the road, and then like 12 people will die within the next
Hmm.
sentence.
Yeah. So,
That'll be
yeah,
funny
go
though.
on over to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Send us a message if there's someone that you want us to cover, or even if you just want to say hi. Murderwordspodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
That's
And
it.
we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.